Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell here with attorney Jessup, and we're going to talk about Unum disability insurance claims today, and we're going to do a general overview about them, everything from applications through appeals and lawsuits, and kind of just our opinions about them, some things we think that you should watch out for, some policy language things. Now, just to give you a little recap about Unum as we were doing this video in 2020, last year they reported profits of over $1 billion. This is a company that 10 years ago was under investigation by every single state. Basically every state did an attorney general did an investigation for a multi-state, which resulted in a multi-state settlement and hundreds of millions of dollars in claim reevaluation plus penalties. And then the states told them, look, you have to give us a proposal as to how you're going to review these claims. So giant companies survived that. They're healthy now. But the real question is, if you're a claimant, are you really getting a fair review over there, or are you just getting now Unum, who's figured out how to make big money in this disability business, kind of like a not so fair review? And where do you lean in terms of the fairness of the review that Unum's giving a claimant?
You know, unlike a lot of carriers where, I may not agree with how they go about their reviews, they'll send it out to outside doctors to take a look at things. With Unum, the initial review and then the appeal reviews as well, it's for all intents and purposes, in-house people. So it's kind of hard to say that someone who's on Unum's payroll, who's an employee of them, is going to be fair and impartial. That's where I think it's really hard if you get a denial. It's a harder uphill battle in getting that overturned because you're fighting against not outside doctors who may be a little impartial, but employees of the company.
All right, let me touch briefly on how this goes right from the start, because I know you see this all the time. Yeah. We represent a lot of people when they're applying, and if you have already applied and you've been denied, then you know what what happened, because it's very consistent. And what happens is you call them and say, I'm going to file a claim, whether it's short or long term. Within days, they're calling you on the phone. Mm-hmm. They want to interview you. If you don't have representation, you should at that point, because what you give them is being documented tremendously, and it could significantly affect your claim, because choosing the date of disability, as we've discussed in our other videos, is a tremendously important thing. Now they're trying to take this initial interview from you and shape your claim based upon that whole thing. So that's important right out of the box. The other thing they do is once they start getting information from you, they go ahead and they have a structure where they're doing these forum meetings. So what they'll do is they'll go ahead and they'll have like a director, and then they'll have the person assigned to the claim, and then they'll bring in one of the doctors or nurses in-house, and they'll bring in a vocational consultant. So at a minimum, they got like 4 people sitting in a meeting, and they all get together and say, how are we going to review this claim? Now the question is, when they're sitting there looking at how they're going to review the claim, do you think that they're looking for a reason to find why the person's disabled, or are they looking for information that's missing?
Well, for missing, it's almost like they're reviewing the case to see, is this person trying to pull one on us? Where are they lying? Where is there, not legal fraud, but where are they trying to get something that they don't deserve?
So when I look at these, and the reason we know all of these things is not only from deposing them tons of times and reviewing thousands of Unum denials where we get the claim file, is that they document all of these meetings. They have things called the forum meetings, they have the vocational review meeting, they have the medical review meeting, and everybody's working together for the same goal to say, what's missing here so we don't have to approve the claim. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's not a reasonable claim where they're like, here's the support. It's always about what's not here. And specifically, the medical records reviews are done where here's what's not in the records, not here's what's in the records. Yeah. So can a nurse initially review the claim, and can Unum rely on a nurse review to approve or deny a claim?
They do, and yes, and they do that a lot. Sometimes they'll send it up the chain of command to an on-site physician who rubber stamps. You were saying these forms, it almost seems where once one person makes a decision, everyone just seems to go, I concur with that decision. But quite often in initial denials, you do see that it's just, a nurse case manager that ultimately was the, deciding factor on the medicals.
The other thing I see that's really disturbing to me is they've become so arrogant and so aggressive in their approach to claims that they'll use their in-house doctors to call your treating doctor. And when they're doing that, what they're trying to do is get your treating doctor to agree to something that their in-house doctor agrees with, which is often that you're not limited or restricted in a particular thing. And then if they don't speak to your doctor, they'll send a letter to the doctor saying, this is our opinion. If you don't agree with our position, then write back to us. If you don't agree. And most of the time, the doctors will ignore that letter, not send anything, and then they'll take the position to say, your doctor agrees with our doctor because we didn't hear any response. Or they'll shape the letter in such a way where they'll bait your doctor into basically saying that you don't have a restriction or limitation. And I see this in almost more than half the denials, that type of letter comes. What is your also opinion about Unum's use of video surveillance?
They aren't the most known for it. They're not the heaviest user of it. They do use it a lot, and then their reliance on that, or even investigations, if they're looking, they do a search on the internet, they look at your social media, look at blogs, anything you may have out there, they will use that and almost ignore a lot of the other medical information and focus on it. I've seen more claim files than I can think of where all the doctors who reviewed it in the form meetings only talk about, well, according to the surveillance or what we saw online, the restrictions that the doctors are providing seem inconsistent with. So they would place more weight on that than the actual information provided from doctors, testing, anything like that. So the video surveillance, they will use even the seemingly most benign of things that they capture you doing as a way to twist it into you haven't been truthful with us and you actually have more physical ability than you've led us to believe.
Steve, talk about why we see these reports in the claim files and why Unum's asking to run credit reports and background checks on every single claimant.
They want to find any reason that this person may be filing for disability, secondary gains. They want to know everything about you. They want to know if you filed bankruptcy, if you're in dire straits, if you have liens against you, as some way to build this dialogue and this story that you are not entitled to this, you're a fraud. They'll go to great lengths at that. You'll see the reports. A claim file, say the claim file's 1,000 pages, there could be upwards of 200 pages worth of various different investigations done. And throughout entire claims, you and I have a case where the person been on claim for over a decade, and I counted no less than 9 times they did surveillance or did an investigation over the course of that 10 years.
What about their review of social media, and what do they do with that, and what are they looking for?
Social media, and the unfortunate thing with social media is a lot of people, they always say you portray the best parts. You want to make it seem like things are good. They're using that to show, oh, you were able to go out and have dinner with friends. You were able to sit. Oh, you went on vacation, these types of things. They're using that as evidence of ability, as opposed to the context of what it's in. So if your medical records are talking about how you can't do X, Y, and Z and you're restricted from all these things, they'll look at that social media and say, well, that's your doctor's opinion. This is the reality that we see, when most people know social media is far from reality.
When you look at the Unum lawsuits, and there's more Unum lawsuits than any other company. They're the biggest in the world, and you look at how their doctors are reviewing these claims, and their doctors are getting beat up by the courts as well, yet they still go back to them. How do they get away with going back to the same doctors time and time again and getting the same opinions? Is that not illegal?
Obviously the courts are coming at them. Illegal? No. Obviously not. It's not illegal. They keep doing it. It almost reminds me of when you hear these stories about automakers doing recalls. They determine, well, we'll only do a recall if the settlements amount are going to cost more than to do the recall. It's almost the same thing. We'll keep doing it. Some courts rule against us. Enough won't that why would we mix it up? Because our profit margins, like you said, are so large that it's business as usual with them. Even when the courts slap around, or you said the states did, they still find a way to manipulate it to their advantage.
What about Unum doing field interviews? Do they use that technique? And what should someone be concerned about if they do them?
Yes, they will do field interviews, depending on the type of policy. If you have a private policy and you're watching this, there's a better chance to do a field interview with you. You can almost rest assured, like you said, that in the initial one, they will want to talk to you. Unum is very big on the meet and greet, where they're gathering information. And it's during those times that it's always best to answer the question, don't volunteer extra, and having an attorney on the phone with you. just to make sure the line of questioning is correct, and also to clarify things that the person might be saying, because we know what the insurance company's trying to get at, but as the insured, a lot of times I think they're so nervous and they just want to provide information and be helpful that it can work against them.
Another thing about Unum, if they get a bad taste in their mouth for something, they see you on surveillance, they see your social media, someone gives them a tip of something, or they get one nugget that they don't like about you, that's it. I mean, they're not going to believe one word your doctors say or what you say, and they are just they're going to take that all the way. That's their big thing, is we're going to bank on this one thing, and if we lose, we lose. But bottom line is, we think this is enough to show that this person, is incredible at all. And so you got to be very aware of what your doctors are doing and what is on your social media profile, and what you're telling the company, because they will jump on any opportunity to go after you. Let's shift gears a second and talk about Unum and litigation and the actual filing of a lawsuit. A lot of these policies have discretionary clauses, and why is that a problem for a claimant? Why can that be a big hurdle to overcome for a claimant when filing an ERISA disability lawsuit?
I would say too, we have videos on this, so it goes into various different aspects of the litigation, make this unique. But one of the biggest things when it comes to these policies is a standard of review known as arbitrary and capricious. So in court, where you don't testify, there's no juries, a judge is tasked with two steps. One, you have to prove that you're disabled. That's generally the easier step. Most people think, well, if the judge finds I'm disabled, then I should be approved. If the judge finds there's sufficient medical evidence that you're disabled, it goes to a second step, and that's whether or not Unum acted arbitrary and capricious. To kind of strip that down to the easiest sense is, did they have a reasonable basis to deny the claim? Did they provide you a reasonable review? It's a very, very low threshold that they have to meet, and you see that a lot of times they win their cases. So you have a judge that says, yes, I find this person disabled, but based on the totality of information that Unum had, it was a reasonable conclusion that they had, so I have to uphold their decision. It's very, very hard to prevail under that. So that's why your application, the appeals, everything needs to be set right from the get-go to avoid litigation. But if you do find yourself there, give you really a leg to stand on and possibly win.
Do you find that a claimant who files a lawsuit will be made some kind of settlement offer, or does Unum dig their heels in and say, we're sorry, we denied the claim, we're not offering you anything?
Like most insurance companies out there, they will look to try to resolve with some type of lump sum settlement. The valuations on that, it's not always going to be great. It's going to be based on a myriad of factors, most importantly, the strength of your case, right? Because by the time it gets to litigation, now it's attorneys looking at it. So they're looking at their clients, assessing risk in that. So you want to have as much information to be able to show they weren't reasonable, to prove the disability, and that's going to have a net effect on what the settlement is. Also, to that effect, in the event you are on claim, certain things, they have factors that they will. Unum will also look at negotiated settlements. It kind of goes back to this idea of it's a business and they treat it that way. It's efficient, they keep everything in-house, it's cold, it's efficient, and it's numbers game to them.
Right, and one of the things we've had a lot of success also is on claims that we take on with denials, we've been able to have a lot of success of resolving a post-appeal denial without the need to engage in extensive litigation. And I think that's because I know it's because we've proven ourselves through litigating over the past 20 years against Unum to say, look, do you want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, or do you want to try for the benefit of your company saving costs and for our client to save money and try to get more money into the client's hands? Let's try to get an early resolution to this matter rather than waiting 18 months to 3 years where the client is basically, could become destitute, has no money whatsoever. And so we've had a lot of success in within a couple months, 3 to 6 months of a post-appeal denial, to successfully resolve a claim to the client's satisfaction. So that's certainly something we want to discuss with you if your claim has been denied. So we could talk all day on Unum, and I didn't even get into nuances and the policies that are of a concern to you, certain definitions within the policy, changes of definition that you have to be concerned with, how they define occupation. There's so many more things to discuss, and there's so many little things that we know from our experience that when we look at your policy or we look at your denial letter, that we can immediately say, Unum didn't do this or Unum didn't do that, because I guarantee they didn't do everything. It's almost never that I've reviewed a Unum claim evaluation where I said, you know what, they did such a good job here that I don't see any way, to find that they acted, unreasonably. There's always something they're going to miss or something they ignored because they're just too big and they're too caught up in the way they do things. So what I want to do is encourage you to go ahead and get a copy of your policy if you're applying or if you've been denied. Go ahead and send us a copy of that. We will review it immediately. You can contact us through our free consultation form or you can call us. Our lawyers always take your call immediately once you call. We represent clients all over the country. We never charge any fees or costs unless we make a recovery for you. And we really look forward to the opportunity to review your claim for you. Thank you for considering us.